And I will, I guess we can do introductions this way. This is how we've been doing it, but I'll start. I am Sarah Williams, and I am one of the Collaborative Network consultants here at the Jackson Collaborative Network.
And I am Amy Forrest, and I'm also a consultant with the Jackson Collaborative Network. Good to see you all.
I am Marcus Gill. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the Jackson County Intermediate School District.
I'm Angie Guadagnini. I am the Community Resource Coordinator with Department of Health and Human Services.
I'm the this is Harry Wilson. I'm the chair of the United Center for Caring, which is a small nonprofit on Mechanic downtown, and I'm also the chair of the Department of Health and Human Services Board for Jackson County.
I'm Shelley Milligan, and I'm the coordinator of the Breakout Drug Education Program, and I'm one of the 2 instructors we have in Jackson. I'm also recently joined a group that Mission has put together, which is the Mid-State Health Network. And they've asked people to serve on this committee to take a look at practices and policies within the region.
Nice.
And I'm Rebecca Hawkins.
Was that specific to drug and alcohol use or other stuff?
We covered gateway drugs, and then we generally also cover synthetics, hallucinogenic drugs.
I meant the Mid-State Health Network. Is that just drugs or is it other stuff? Like mental health, alcohol?
It's SUD. Rebecca, correct me if I'm wrong. It doesn't cover mental health. I think it's just SUD treatment and prevention.
Okay.
So I'm Rebecca Calkins. I am with Drug Free Jackson and Most Teens Don't. And I'm also on the board with Angie for the Pride Center. So we'll throw that one in there too.
That's great. Well, thank you all for being here. I look forward to this discussion. As Harry has already set a great tone, we have like loose structure in these meetings. The intent is that we get to a point where you all are connecting and we sharing things. We have slides. We might not go through all of them. They might not all be relevant for today's conversation. It always depends on who shows up and where the conversation goes. And Amy and I kind of serve as a guide. So if things go way off, we'll be like, hey, let's come back. And sometimes other people in the group do it too. So it's even more delightful. So I will share a screen to get us started. And let's see if this is the right one. It just might be. So this is our starting slide. And we've already done welcome and introductions. I might go through some of these slides. We might fly through them a little bit because many of you have been to many affinity groups, and we'll just set the stage, set the tone as a reminder. We have 3 different affinity groups that are currently happening. We're likely going to add 1 or more this calendar year around big root cause issues that people in the Jackson community have said are things that they're working on. So the one you're in around inequitable policies and practices. And then we also have one around building trust in the community, and another one on navigating service systems. And these groups are for all sectors, all levels, right? People working boots on the ground, and also people at the highest level decision making, all are working on strategies tied to these root causes. Some things we hope that you will attain by attending, gaining knowledge. Connections seem to kind of rise to the top in all of these meetings, which we're not mad about, both in the meeting and then afterwards, connecting with each other on similar work or how to connect each other to each other. building relationships between you all and with us, and then also tracking and measuring the progress. Just pausing quick at group norms as we work together and hopefully create a space that feels authentic and transparent, and a place where you feel safe to throw out questions and ideas, and or if we say an acronym and you're like, I've never heard that before, please ask, and presuming positive intent from everyone. Amy, do you want to stop at this one?
Sure. You want to jump in on this one? Or
Yes,
stop?
sure.
Okay.
Well, I mean, either.
So no, so Sarah talked a little bit about the intent of the group and what we hope for you guys to gain. And these are ways, rather than kind of meeting to meet and chit-chatting about issues and things that we're seeing, while those are things are very important and the connections that we're making important, we also want to kind of quantify the work that's happening in your organizations. So to do that, we usually start, I mean, one of the first steps is building that partner profile. That's that area on our website where you can kind of put in your name and what you're doing kind of in your organization around inequitable practices and policies, or around system change work, or basically also just what you're doing. That enhances the connection, so folks can see, wow, so-and-so is doing, you know, working on this particular thing. I should connect with them because I'm doing something similar. So that's kind of that first dip your toe into the system change work and understand better who's doing that work in the community. That also lets Sarah and I know which root cause you're working on. So we've talked about these root causes. There are really 14 that we've identified that are really those deep barriers that our community members are experiencing. And this lets us know kind of where work is happening and where people have leverage around different things. So, so yeah, that partner profiles is one of the first things that we encourage you to do. And then getting into these affinity groups, not only just talking about discussions, but then moving to action. So that's one of the things as a community, we talk about all these barriers that we want to kind of break down and all of these access to care issues and things, but we don't know if we're actually being effective until we start tracking it. So action planning is super, not only helpful for you guys in your organizations, but it's helpful for us as a network to say, yes, we actually are making progress to this. We have seen these couple of measures, you know, increase. So we know that there's better access for certain, you know, populations. So while we love to talk about the issues, we really want to emphasize kind of moving forward and into this next year, putting that down on paper. And that is something you can do action planning on your own. We can facilitate action planning with you, but there's also an opportunity if you are addressing a policy in your organization and you've, you know, already got traction on it and you don't really have the time to like sit down and action plan with us, like let us know via email or phone call or any way that works for you that, hey, by the way, we've identified this in our organization and steps that we're doing, or this is our strategic plan section that is addressing this. Forward that to Sarah and I, because we can really translate into our dashboard and really use that to say, yes, as a community and as a collaborative, we are making progress in these, you know, 5 different areas. So that's going to be kind of a focus moving forward, is really kind of quantifying what we're doing. And we only can do that with your assistance if you guys are letting us know that these are the things that you're doing. And then that kind of leads into that tracking and reporting progress. You say, okay, well, we took this step because we have a policy in our organization that is preventing this access to care. We're going to do this, and then come back to us, and we can reach out to you in 2 months and say, yeah, we tried this, it didn't work, we didn't really understand the problem, so we need to look at a different thing, and we can help you better understand that problem and give you tools and resources to say, that's great insight, try this, you know. And then, you know, as a collaborative, we'll kind of gather all those numbers and be able to see that we're actually moving the needle on a lot of these things. Any questions, problems, concerns, difficulties?
Were you
Oops.
able to compile some of the post-its that were noted at the quarterly meeting last week related to?
Yeah, that is actually that it was a great kind of stepping off point where people are sharing what they're doing, and
It was wonderful. I didn't even get a chance to read all of them. It really was good.
Yes, we plan on doing that. We have not
Okay.
kind of formally organized around that, but that is, I mean, Sarah and I were stoked about that opportunity to then touch base with partners and say, hey,
Mhm.
we see that this is going on. Tell us a little bit more. Let's put it into,
Yeah.
we can translate that into an action plan. So then those metrics are actually continued to be tracked. And that's the thing, like everyone, we have a lot of folks in our collaborative that are like, I don't have time to action plan. And I get it. Like we're all strapped.
Yeah.
We're doing more with
Yeah.
less. But if there's ways like that meeting, that quarterly where people can just kind of verbalize what they're doing, that gives us
Mhm.
so much information and so many different lenses to say, wow, around building trust or around inequitable policies, this is happening. You
Yeah.
know, y'all don't have to necessarily do the formal work, but if we can get different creative ways to get that information, we'll pull it together. And so yeah, we will likely be putting those into more formalized action plan type ways so that on our dashboard, you'll see that these 6
Perfect.
strategies are working around that.
Yeah, because I looking at some of that stuff was really good information, and it would be interesting to see how, like you said, how these organizations are doing that. So that action plan sounds really daunting,
Yeah,
but
it feels, yeah.
really, yeah, just really just having that information available. How are you doing it?
Yeah,
Just that, how are you doing it, and what are you putting in place to make those changes, because some of them were really good.
yeah,
Mhm.
they were really good. And that's the thing. We know that there's excellent work happening in the community. And
Oh,
we know
yeah.
that people are like moving mountains, but without kind of, and that's kind of the role of the collaborative, right? Without us being able to pull it all together, we're
Yeah.
working in silos and we don't
Yeah.
have that, community impact that we know what's
Mhm.
happening. It's just not formalized. So
Yeah,
that's kind of one of the goals for us to say, these are 7 strategies that are happening individually that are all moving this particular root cause. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting.
That's cool. I'm glad you picked up on that, Angie, too. And it's one of those things too, is where there were so many people at the network quarterly meeting that are engaged in different ways, right? Like some
Yeah,
of them
yeah.
come to affinity groups, some don't, some have action plans, some are really busy, and then you bring everyone together. And so of course, selfishly, I'm like, I was also like reading or all the post-it notes and was like, you should come to the affinity groups. But of course, people
Yeah,
have to find,
yeah.
time and value and things like that. So I
Well, and
like,
I think for some of the bigger organizations, like for DHS, so I don't think we need to have 7 people attending these affinity groups if we're all talking. So having Jackie and Jen attend that quarterly meeting, let me know some of the things that they're doing that I can, touch base with them and kind of represent DHS in those things, so they don't have to take that time to do it. I think recognizing, not just for DHS, because so many people were represented at that meeting that they all can't attend the affinity groups. Otherwise, it would just be the quarterly meeting every month for each of those affinity groups. So I think having those focuses is very helpful.
Well, and to your point too, like we certainly don't want to over meeting people. It's like a nightmare. But also those people, I would argue, at DHS all will have different roles too, right? So
Yes,
even
we do.
if you're all in the
Yep.
inequitable policies and practices group, likely the things you're working on around inequitable policies and practices and the strategies that you're using are
Yep.
probably different than someone who might be on whatever, a boots on the ground frontline worker, and would
Yeah.
likely be different than Zoe or something, right? So like,
Yeah.
even if and also we only want people here who find value and are like, yes, I'm ready, can't wait, I'm excited to go. And also we want people to represent themselves in the organization they're in, without overlapping just to overlap, finding that balance in there.
Yep.
That's great. Great. Thanks for pointing that out. I think should we move? Let's see where it takes us. So this is, excuse me. So this is just a quick refresher of last month when we met, and we had such a great discussion that it actually took 2 slides for me to snip. It's a very fancy snipping tool situation I have going from the PDF I saved. But we had Teshna was here talking about a lot of the work she's doing through Henry Ford. Brian was here attended from
Highfields.
Highfields, and it was really an incredible conversation around actually I wrote it down somewhere. Oh yeah, there's the new auto insurance law and how that's disproportionately affecting some of the people they serve. So, and then, Marcus and Rebecca were here as well, talking about the things they're working on around specifically inequitable policies and practices. So I just wanted to just throw that up there. Doesn't have to be a reference point, can be if people find that it's helpful, but really there's a piece in there too of we'd like to hear maybe if there is progress or if there are updates since the last time we met, maybe there's barriers, but really around like the strategies you all are working on or hope to work on. Or maybe if there's, like Marcus is like, oh, actually I did a focus group and it bombed and actually I'm going a different direction.
I'll hop in here.
Oh, all right. Okay, cool.
So you go back to where you put me on? No.
Go back. Okay, my bad. I was going to the Padlet. You just, you beat me to it. All right, hold on. Let's go. Where are we going here? Let's see.
What did you have up there for what I said last time? Oh yeah, so I was coming out of a meeting right when I came in late at the end. It was just you and I think maybe Rebecca on here or something. That's how I probably ended up, or Teshina, somebody on there. It was Teshina, and then I had
it was you guys are like lunch, go.
Yeah. Right after that, it was Teshina.
Yeah.
So that's when I told you I was adding people to the process because one perspective is not diverse. So when talking about that, I was tasked with creating hiring guidelines for the ISD. We wanted to make sure that our hiring guidelines was equitable. And in that meeting, I told them that, hey, I'm gonna need some help with this because if I come up with them, I don't think that's equitable from one person's perspective. I need some volunteers. So Heather Hochelaw volunteered to help me. She was the only person that volunteered. Actually, my boss did. And I told my boss, no, thank you. No bosses are allowed at the table. So Heather helped me and she did great. So over the course of the month, we've created, well, when you think about guidelines, you think about a lot of terms and legal jargon. I didn't want to deal with any of that. And doing research, what we needed was a process and not guidelines. So we came up with a complete process that made our hiring process a lot more equitable. And we went from start to finish. We came up with a hold on, I got all of it right here actually, so I can just tell you exactly what it is. We came up with the first thing we did was look at how we do our job descriptions. So we came up with a rubric to even do our job description, and it's called a candidate evaluation criteria metrics. And it's a rubric that all of our hiring managers, before we even write the job descriptions, they can have this rubric to make sure that that the job descriptions are equitable. And you can also use the same rubric throughout the selection process when you're reviewing candidates' applications and stuff. Then we had some information about, we wanted to create a process about our hiring committees. Who should be on our hiring committees? So to make sure that is a diverse committee. We talked about not having so many people from the same team in the hiring committee, like put a limit to like 2 people from the team, but we created what came out of our equity team meeting was that we're going to have a rubric for that so we can make sure that we hit all of these points on our hiring committees to make sure that they're equitable. So maybe who are we serving, having somebody that we're serving on that committee, having not the whole team from one department, but just a few people, making sure we have some gender diversity, some racial diversity on our hiring committees. Then we also provided some resources for bias-free hiring. Because one of the main things we want to do is we want to make sure that everybody increases their bias literacy and thinking about these biases that we have while we are on these interview committees. So we gave out we got a packet from the Western Michigan University that was created by the Turner Consulting Group, and we're going to make it mandatory that everybody that's on an interview committee at least reads through that bias-free hiring so they can have that in mind, and also make sure that the managers have a conversation about this to make sure that everybody's accountable, that they actually did read it before you serve on those committees. So we did
Dang, I
that.
kind of feel like everyone in the world should just be reading that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Then we gave everybody an example of a specific job description rubric where they can have it just as a template, just in case they had a specific job description that they wanted to post or go through, that they can use that. Then we gave everybody a candidate evaluation rubric. So when you're debriefing, because that's when the biases really come out. After you're done interviewing, when people sitting around and you're talking about, talking about these candidates, that's when the biases really come out. So we gave them a rubric to really put some further thought into debriefing. And then we gave them 5 questions to make sure that you're asking yourself as a committee that's going to mitigate bias while you're debriefing. So we went from the process from the start to the finish. And even with just us two, I didn't want to say, hey, here's the process. So we came up with the process. Then we took it to our equity team yesterday and we talked it out. We talked everything out with our equity team. And now we're at the point where we're going to meet myself, our superintendent, and our director of HR. We're going to meet and see how exactly we want to implement it. So we've made great progress with that.
It's amazing, Marcus, such great work. And I love the fact that at every step of the way you stopped and engaged others, because that's such a key to really understanding and removing your own biases that might be present. So that's amazing.
I thank you. That's what I was trying to do, is just not, hey, this is what Marcus thinks. We need to engage everybody in these decisions and actually talk about them.
Right, at every step too, right?
Right.
Because you make this, you build this and make assumptions with the limited perspective that your team has, and then you brought it back out again to a bigger team and brought it back in, and so that's amazing. And that also helps you better understand really where the issues are, versus making assumptions about what those things are. So that's awesome.
I like also too that you talked about like putting limits on certain amounts of people from certain teams, right? Because people also have like good intent. Like, is it beneficial for both Amy and me to show up to a thing? Like, actually, maybe one of you is enough. One can stay home, and like, we actually need more representation here, right? Like, there's that for sure, like the equity lens,
And one of the main reasons we want to, in my opinion, that we want to have different outside views is because when you have when you say we had an interview, we had the whole team there. We talk about how important diversity is and how different perspectives can help you, but when you're thinking about stuff in a team form, you don't want any disruption in your team. You don't want anything different. You don't want different opinions. You want to, especially if you got it running smoothly, you want to keep things the same. So what are you going to hire? People like people, people that are the same.
That's right.
So that's why it's important to not have a whole team doing the hiring, have some outside perspectives.
Yeah, people don't like change.
Hey, Marcus, this is Harry.
Yes,
So is this just within hiring at the ISD, or are you helping all 9 districts or whatever we have in the county?
This is just the ISD. This is just the ISD. So I'm focusing on our processes and policies and stuff like that. So this is just ISD, but I'm here to serve and help any other school district around. So I've been pulled in for meetings or situations to help any of the school districts, but this is for the ISD.
Yeah, it just seems like since your main function is to do training and technical assistance in schools across the county, this would be a great training for the districts, right? Are they part of your team, or is this team just inclusive of ISD?
Just ISD.
To that point,
one last thing that I just want to say, and that's
wait, hold on, Harry, hold on, because my question is related to that. Hold on. No, because I will admit I am not like an expert in the DEIJ stuff, but I have lots of like experience with like making programs sustainable, right? Or like how to make sure this thing keeps happening. Because to Harry's point, obviously, Marcus, your capacity is like taking care of the ISD, making sure here's our step 1. We got to do this, this, and this. Okay. So is there a plan or place to say like, okay, and then And then after we do this thing, then what? Like, is there, and maybe we're just jumping too far ahead, but I immediately think of like, this should go out, right? This should trickle down. And like, is there, not train the trainer, but you know what I mean? Like, how do we get it down into the schools?
So that's a great question. And my boss will be the first one to tell you, because he said this when I did an implicit bias training, me and another Precious Armstrong she works for the ISD, and we did it on the day of discovery for the whole county, the first day of discovery. So the second one is coming up, and my boss says, sorry to say, but he wants us to train our career center. So we got another one coming up in April just to train our career center. And I've only been here 5 months. And selfishly, he wants us to focus on in-house first. Get our house in. Can't take care of anybody else's house until you get your house in order.
Yeah, of course.
So he got us focusing. Has me focusing on taking care of the ISD before I'm trying to get pulled in 12 different directions in 12 different other school districts. So that's why right now I'm focusing on trying to get our house in order. But I do make myself available for any of these school districts that needs help. For example, like I just went to Columbia Central last week and met with the principal, and they had a little small meeting dealing with race at their school. I coach basketball at Concord, and our principal knows this is my job. So now she calls me to do literally everything for Concord school districts. So I'm helping, and I'm a resource, but I am focusing on getting the ISD in order.
Sure. And I did not mean in my words that you would be that person for, to be the resource. But in my mind, it's like, Mark is starting here. You're the ISD point. You're the ISD person. And then maybe there are 4 or 5 or whatever, right? Like district people who are actually now on this pretend team will just make up. I don't know, but like.
And I'm willing to share anything that we have, any ideas that we're doing, anything that's going on. I'm willing to share it with anybody in any school districts that needs it also.
That's exciting. That's
Cool.
good stuff. Sorry, Harry. Now, please continue.
No, I was just gonna say, this is just an aside, but I noticed you write this as DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. But in a bunch of the universities I work at, they've now turned it into Jedi training. So it's JDEI. So it's like a little Star Wars theme. Just so you think a little bit about the marketing of it. Anyway, I told you it's kind of out of the box, but I like Jedi training. Cool.
I've heard that one.
Yeah.
That's funny.
No, great, Marcus. This sounds really good.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to share that with y'all, and so this is my second month being in charge of equity meetings. So they've had the team before I got here, but now that I'm in this position, I'm in charge of it. And both meetings that we had, I've had people come up and say, hey, now they feel like the real work is getting done and we're having real conversations. So that excites me even more to continue to do the work. Our first meeting was about, my first meeting last month was just about taking the temperature of our culture and making sure that we have a great culture in our organization and making sure people feel welcome and feel included. And then also changing the mindset, because we have so many, when you talk about policies and procedures, people have the mindsets of those policies and procedures and have the mindsets of how you've been trained to think, how you've been socialized to think our whole life. And the world is evolving. So we either evolve or get left behind. And a lot of things is changing our mindsets of how we've thought about things that we've been taught our whole life. And that's hard to do. But, if we're aware of things that we need to, think about differently, then we can do it. So that was the first. And then we came up with some great conversation and some things other things we needed to tackle out of those conversations. And we're looking forward to doing those too.
Wow. Marcus, can you tell me what is there a questionnaire? How do you take a temperature of an organization?
I mean, it's just getting all of most of the people on my equity team are supervisors in their departments. So just talking about, how do you feel the culture is in your departments, and giving ideas and things that we can do as an organization to make people feel more inclusive. included, it's hard to do. We talked about one of the things that came out of that was one of our ROTC sergeants is on our equity team. And he said that he's noticed that a lot of the Black kids at the Career Center started and didn't finish, left, just not there anymore, not feeling comfortable, not there anymore. So now one of the things I'm tasked with is, okay, we got to figure out why. Why is that happening? So we got to figure out, we're going to come up with some type of exit survey that got to be anonymous so they can feel comfortable with telling us why they left the Career Center. So it's things like that that's hard to figure out, but we got to figure out why and what's going on. So figuring out things, barriers and things that's going on, and then trying to figure out why and what we can do about them. But at the same time, trying to be proactive and do more fun things at work, or more, things that make people want to come to work to make that culture great,
That's amazing stuff, Marcus. And that is kind of what we have been preaching, like on a lot of our kind of technical services, is just like that 5 whys, right? Well, why did you leave the Career Center? And often you'll get, well, transportation was a problem. And I love that, because that's just usually never the actual problem. That's just something, an anecdotal thing that people will give you, transportation was a problem. But then asking those deeper questions, well, why was transportation a problem? Well, because the bus route doesn't. And so then you dig into like all of these systemic things that are barriers that we can start tackling. So I love that temperature and the understanding those root causes are so critical to really making deep change, and really affecting that. So I love that.
And
But yeah.
on that, not just students of color.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Honing in. Yep.
I just seen her type that. Yeah.
So Marcus, because you know me, I'm always like, let's kind of quantify this, right? How can we make sure that this goes beyond our conversation? I know you did some action planning for like the Concord basketball group, and I'm wondering if this could be a type of thing where you very loosely, or Sarah and I can loosely pull it together in an action plan type of format. Like, here was my problem, that there was inequitable practices around hiring at the JCISD, and these are the 3 strategies that steps that I took. And this is the root cause that it addressed, because that will then show up on our dashboard that the ISD is actually found an equitable policy, took these 3 steps, and this was, the outcome that came. That bumps into like our whole collective picture of the work that's going on. So think about whether or not you'd be open to kind of pulling together something like that.
I'm always open, and I don't know if our hiring process was an inequitable policy.
Yes,
We just wanted to make it better. We just wanted to make sure that it was
I
good.
shouldn't have made that assumption. Sorry.
Yeah. We just want to make sure that we're being proactive. We want to make sure that we're doing the right things. So that's just one of the things we wanted to focus on. Now, if y'all can find a way to help me figure out this students of color leaving survey, how we can figure out how we could get a survey together or action plan around that would be great.
Yep, for sure. We'll put our heads together and think on what, ways that you could reach them, and ways that you could do outreach and get really quality input from them. And the anonymity.
And it could be even if it's a third party and we got to possibly hire somebody, but I haven't had time to dig into what I can do. So if y'all can help me with an action plan on that would be awesome.
And it's
I wrote that. Yeah, I would say Amy's got that down too. And to your point too, Marcus, like I think in these affinity groups, like when everything is so messy too, right? Because when you think about like some students of color not finishing the Career Center, like we might not even know the why yet. Like we're like, and so to me, like assuming, I think there's a good assumption that there might be a policy or practice in place that's inequitable, even if we haven't found it yet. So like, look, we can get there, but also I don't think it's like wrong to bring it up in this affinity group. I guess, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not going to hold you to it and be like, well, Marcus is here, so obviously that means there's a policy that's out of place, but I think it's great that we're like, this is happening and we don't know why.
I'm comfortable with sharing, and we're here. And I mean, if y'all 2 are here to help, I told y'all from jump when y'all said that, hey, I'm gonna take you up on it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If y'all can help us figure it out, that's gonna be great. I'm gonna share good and bad what's going on here.
Perfect.
Well, and those are connections, like, connecting with like Nancy, at the College and Career Access Center to find out what she's hearing on, word on the street is from what she's engaging and what she's done. So like, it's all those things put together. So yeah, we can definitely build on figuring those things out.
Okay.
Awesome.
I think you're going to end up centering on like having an interview with them,
Mhm.
because people that leave stuff don't often take the time to fill out surveys. And sometimes they just don't, they'll leave, but they leave like they just don't show up one day. So then how do
Right.
you're not
And
going to
that's
get
what
a
we
survey.
talked about that,
response.
Harry, in the meeting when we said, like, how are we going to get it? Like, are we going to have a company call them after and ask
Yeah.
them, or, how do
Yeah.
we, that's what we try to wrap our head around. Well, how can we get this information?
Sure. Yep.
And that's it. I love that conversation too, right? Because again, to Harry's point of like, if someone has like a great experience or like wants to rave to everyone, I'm like, let me tell you all about this thing that I love so much. But like, it's hard to get the people that didn't finish, or who even knows where they are, who even knows if the phone number is the best way to reach them, who knows, right? And all of those things, and thinking creatively. Go ahead, Amy.
No, I was just gonna say there could be stigmas around reasons that they've left,
Right.
where
Yeah.
that there are, which they don't, nobody wants to talk about some issues that folks are experiencing, and there, there's biases and stigmas around all of that. So it's kind of leveling all that to get true and honest answers.
Which is where the relationships part comes in too, right? Like
Mhm.
to me, how are we collecting data? Am I collecting data? Is someone else, like, is some random person calling them and saying like, why aren't you coming? Or is maybe someone they know, which also might lead to more of a true answer, right? Like maybe it's a mental health answer that's actually, or maybe it's a parent or family issue that's, yeah, like you said, like it could be stigma or whatever, or maybe it's transportation, who knows, right? But like coming at it from a how can we help you framework.
And if we get, no pressure, but if we could figure out, like, we don't have to have the actual survey in place, but if we could figure out some ideas before this time next month, and I can take it to my equity team, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
But let's put it on the calendar. We'll make Marcus. Well, maybe we'll actually have a lunch.
Let's do it on lunch.
It's time. It's time.
Angie's in.
And we can make it a working lunch,
Always.
putting
Well,
together
yeah.
that action plan. I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
There you go.
And it can be in person.
Yeah.
Mhm. As long as everyone, we've got.
I am
some-
totally up for that.
Yes,
So you set a time.
Well, it's being
let's-
this is being recorded, so I have to say that we cannot host any meetings in office, but we're happy to have conversations with comfort level and how people feel about meeting one-on-one, et cetera. And
Absolutely.
yes.
I'm all for that too. So
My comfort level is 100 out of 100. I'm comfortable with a meeting in person, eating lunch. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
am comfortable with that too. So I feel like where we are with these affinity groups now, and you're talking about, instead of just sitting here talking about what we're doing, let's figure out how to make that an action plan. And I think any one of us has to do it alone.
Right.
I feel like as well, you're a community partner. We are community partners. And I feel like partners, we should be helping one another. And I feel like that if I can offer any kind of assistance, let me do that. We can eat for lunch and let's do that and put together some of these action plans so that we can share them with other groups who might not be as far along as the rest of us.
And I feel the same way. Like I said, I do support all of the school districts. I am taking care of in-house at ISD. But if anybody in any of our networks needs my assistance, feel free, let me know. And if I'm available at that time, I'm there.
Also, I just wanted to say, not to call people out, but I call people out when I feel like I have a good rapport with them. So hi, Teshna. I know that your camera's off, and now your camera's off and your microphone's off. So maybe now it's not the best time to say hi, but I did anyway.
She just took a big bite as you.
I know, she's like, I actually stepped away. But glad to see you. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
And another person, literally everybody at home while I'm at work.
Oh, Marcus.
I'm gonna throw you off. The next time we meet, Marcus, I'm gonna be like in the yard or something. Does anyone else have any other updates to like maybe some of the strategies they've been working on around progress or, oh, I see a chat. Oops, you got it. Thanks, Amy. Shelley had to step away. Was there anything else that I wanted to add to this conversation around Marcus's work? Or I'm not sure if people have some updates or progress on some strategies that they've been working on, or something that maybe you're stuck on that maybe
Want to
the
engage
group,
in,
yeah,
right?
the
Yeah.
group could help with, or we could help with.
Like kind of reflecting on your organization, are there things that you feel like you want to dig into or began to dig into around inequitable practices or policies?
I feel like with DHS, it's a continuous, continuous improvement. Making sure that our staff, we're actually doing a training right now and encourage, we've got a thing going on right now about acknowledging how people are identifying. So if I'm identifying as a Black person, regardless of whether or not I am of mixed heritage. So recognizing that heritage and how they identify in our reporting. So when we have cases where Native American, for instance, that's the big one, is in recognizing how people are identifying. And we've been doing training for that. We've had training on how to document in our systems for that. So just having those conversations with folks on how they identify and recognizing that and honoring that.
Angie, where did this stem from? Just curiously, like, were you hearing feedback from clients, or was it staff that felt like?
I think it came out of the data that our child welfare system uses, and it being incorrect a lot of the time. And not because we aren't asking questions, but that we're not reporting what we're hearing accurately in the system. So we're families that, for instance, families that report to us that they're Native American, but then we send documentation and report requirements to Native American tribes that they identify, and the person comes back as not meeting the criteria for that tribe, but they still identify Native American. So we should still be honoring the Native American, even though the tribe isn't recognizing them. So yeah, Rebecca, we talked about that too. Rebecca just wrote that How Jack Became Black is a show on Amazon Prime. Yeah, it just is how people are identifying and making sure that our systems honor how they identify. So
I think
regardless of-
that's such a great point. And
Yeah.
and I think in one of my like 21-day equity challenges, there were many days centered around Native Americans, and also the rules. And I think what you're bringing up is the difference between honoring people and how they identify in all of the ways, and then how systems and rules and policies decide they're going to support, right? Because like we could like list 9 million things that applies to. And so and so it's so tough too, especially, and I will admit I'm not super well versed in like, I do know like if you're on tribal land, right? Like there's different rules, there are different things and like supports, and I'm not super well versed in that. So, but I know it's messy because there's a lot of familial lineage things that like you have to be a this to count as this, and that's, I almost swore, that's really messy. Like that's really, but that also could be applied to so many other things too, right? Like you said, people that and we can also talk like race as a social construct. Like
Yes.
your ethnicity is not race, right? So like someone, it's about the color of our skin and whiteness, essentially, right? So like to me, I love the fact that you said we are acknowledging how people identify. Like, Angie, please tell me, are you she, her? How do you identify? Do you, as a woman? Great. As a white woman? Great. This is how I know to respect you and honor you in your
Yes.
humanness as I
Yes.
interact with you. And like,
Yep.
here, I'm not arguing. I'm not trying to convince. I'm just here to say, I'm here to support and accept and love you in, I realize we're at work, but I will say love and love you in like the way that you are.
In your
period.
space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
And
love how
that's
you
what
put that respect and honor you in your humanness. I'm gonna have to use that for real. I like that.
Oh, thank you.
Make sure you identify her and give her credit.
Oh, please. That's very important to me. Make sure. Yes. No, it's not.
No, I think it, but that's what we're talking about. So that's the one thing that we're doing right now is we're working with our staff to make sure that we are acknowledging the people that we're working with and honoring that heritage that may not be a legal heritage because of the rules and the policies and the systems in place.
But it's their truth. Yeah.
But it's their truth. Exactly. It's their truth.
How is your staff receiving it? Curiously.
You know, I was only part of the initial conversation with staff. I feel like I haven't heard any negative about it. I think staff are really open to engaging with families in any way that they can. And if this is part of that conversation and I can engage them by honoring their truth, I think our staff is very open to that. I mean, we've got some phenomenal staff in our welfare programs. We've got some really good staff that really want to engage and they want to work with families. And I think an important part of that is acknowledging who that family is and honoring that. And I think our staff recognizes that. So I can just, since I haven't talked to the staff, I just feel like our staff just really want to do what's best for their families.
That's amazing. So so stemming from this, it would be interesting to see, because now that you're experiencing that folks identify as they do, and it may not be aligned with whatever practices and policies DHHS has in place to qualify them for certain things. Are there opportunities then moving forward to say, they don't need to be 1/16 of this heritage to qualify? So I'm just wondering, it would be interesting to see if from that better understanding of where folks are at and meeting them where they're at and understanding where they're at, if there are opportunities then to look at policies within the organization that disqualify them because of documentation that could be reassessed. I mean, it would be really interesting to see if you could look at that and be like, okay, why do we have this policy in place? Let's back into like, where did it begin? Who made it?
That's why
was it made?
Yeah. I think that's where Zoe is going with that.
Yeah.
And recognizing, because Zoe is definitely a leader in our community in DEIJ stuff. She is definitely a leader, and she is certainly a leader in our organization. So my guess is that she's going to be pushing for that data and ensuring that we as an organization, not just Jackson County, are honoring all of the cultures and races that are represented where they are.
Yeah, it would be cool to have like a pipeline for your staff to be able to say, because this person didn't meet this because of the regulations, they can't, get this, shove it back up to the top to say, this is a policy that is disadvantaging this population. And let's look at why it's even there. So many times these policies are there just because Joe Schmo, white middle-class man, wrote it 30 years ago to most often disadvantaged people.
Well, one of the biggest things when I worked in the field, one of the biggest things for Native American in particular is if they qualify for a tribe, we have to go above and beyond for them to make sure that they get to any services that are provided, that they have anything that they need. It's way beyond just making the referral and they're responsible to get there. We have to provide their transportation. We have to do a lot of extra things for those that are in a tribe and that are documented as a tribe, which if I am not part of a tribe, or if I'm not part of a tribe that's recognized by our federal government, I don't get those extras. I don't get that extra help. I need it, but because I don't meet that federal guideline that was written by some white middle-aged man, I don't get that quality. And then doing for our families, what is that saying to our families, and how are we helping those families? So I think it's all the way around, but this is a huge one that we're doing right now. So it will be interesting to see how this progresses. And Harry, you'll probably hear more about this on Monday.
Right.
What's Monday?
Monday. is our
A
board
wings
meeting.
lunch? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wings
it's one-
lunch. No, we have a
no.
board meeting on Monday, so he's
Mm.
going to hear about this on Monday.
I think there's another area that DHHS has made a lot of progress in justice, in the justice world. I think about disproportionate representation of people in different, in justice systems. So it's basically
Yes.
saying that there's more black kids and more black people in justice systems than there are in the population.
Yep.
So it's disproportionate, and I think as a part of, it's also been a part of this Cornelius Frederick guy, that he was like about a 12-year-old kid that died in a placement over in Kalamazoo a couple of years ago during
Yep.
restraint. And after that, the state just said, we're not going to restrain kids anymore, and we're going to try to not place kids in congregate care anymore. And so we have gone through this concerted effort to not place kids in congregate care. So I think we used to have 45 kids that were placed in private, nonprofit, and state institutions. And now we're down to, what is it, 14 or something like that, Angie?
Something like that. Yeah, it's very,
So-
very
so
low.
So less than a third of what we used to
Mhm.
have in place. And if you think of those kids, each represent about 200,000 average per placement per year. You're saving that much money in the system, because the county has to pay for half of it, the state has to pay the other half.
Yeah.
So but not the money end. I mean, the money end of it is a side benefit, but the deeper issue is that the kids that are in placement are more likely to end up in long-term custody, in prisons, and other places. So just the fact that we're kind of interrupting it at the front end, but
Yep.
then how to do that has been a big thing on our agenda. And one of the ways, I started a program in Detroit a couple of years ago that's still going on, and we mentor kids from 4 years old all the way through high school, and we pay the mentors. It's a national program, and so Zoe and I kind of thought about that, and she's now assigning cases to staff early on as a prevention initiative, and then making, and those staff get to kind of stay with the case all the way through until in the past, something would happen in a family, a disruption in a family, and then the social workers would come in and all the help would come in, but then it's all reactive to what's going on. This is a way to work with families before, when there's early indicators, not necessarily a big event, early indicators, and then assign a staff, and that staff stays with the family to kind of keep them out of the system, so that those kids stay in the community, stay in the family, and then surround them with supports rather than, sending them to an expensive placement, which, by the way, after working at Star for 22 years, I can say doesn't really work.
Well, and Harry, are those early indicators tracked at school?
Yeah, they could be. Yeah, well, because we now have social workers in the schools,
Yep.
so they can pick up on
Yeah.
some of that at the school. But it's also, any complaint in the neighborhood that might be turned in, that they have to go investigate. And instead of just investigate and walk away, they can investigate, create a case file for that student or that
Well,
family.
and I know too, your lens, and I worked at the state, so I know the lens that I often used was money and cost as well, because that is the most important thing to many people who are high level decision makers. But when you think about what you're talking about like relationships with young people. You're talking about, I mean, mentoring kids and these obviously the early indicators, and we can talk about ACEs and we can talk about
Yeah.
trauma in neighborhoods, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you're really saying like these young people are worth investing in, and
Yes.
coming at it on the front end. Like I would like to, the mentoring piece is like, I would like to offer you a connection. And we already have data to show that connection is the number one mitigator to addiction and all these things, right? So like you're
Yeah.
saying, I'd like to pair you with a protective factor.
I have a real life example in that. Growing up, I grew up in one of the worst neighborhoods in Detroit, and we had a
East
church,
side or west side?
West Side, Finkel and the Lodge.
Oh, I know that area. Yeah.
Yeah. So our neighborhood church, we had a youth leader, and we had a basketball gym at our church, and he made everybody, you had to come to church to play basketball. You had to come to Bible study. Bible studies on Wednesday. So we had to have Bible study before you play. So the whole neighborhood would show up, have fellowship and Bible study, and play basketball. Well, I mean, you shine a light on people enough, then it's going to hit. So people were actually in the God, actually in the church, come to church. He took us on, I mean, stuff we couldn't afford to do in our neighborhood. There's a camp called Kids Across America we went to in Missouri. They fundraised, took us on trips. He worked at a youth home. He ended up adopting two of the boys from the youth home and changed their lives. And so many of us made it out of our neighborhood, and so many people, like even ones that didn't even graduate from high school, they weren't in trouble and they weren't in prison. Well, when he ended up getting elderly and getting sick and couldn't do that anymore, the kids in our neighborhood just literally all went to prison. And I'm thinking it was like a direct correlation of not having that in our neighborhood anymore. So that mentorship is huge and a part of why so many kids end up in the system. We had somewhere to go, we had somewhere to do. And when they removed that from our neighborhood, it ended up getting crazy.
That's so, I love that story. I don't know why I'm not surprised, but I like love that it like, this is like your personal, because I can think of too, like I did not grow up in like Detroit on, but I can also think of an exact moment where a teacher or like an adult, right? Like that connection piece is so important and can change a trajectory for so many young people, like all over the board, and I think, and all of the things we talk about all the time, it's so hard to also to get, right? Like decision makers and funders on board with prevention stuff. We say this all the time. It's so hard to get people on board with that because we're trying to stop the problem before it starts. We're trying to prevent the tragedies from happening. So it's kind of hard to have data sometimes, but that mentoring piece or whatever, connection, community programs, basketball camps, right? Like you are offering a connection. You are offering a, hey, how was your week? Hey, how was your whatever? Like you're offering an opportunity to connect. And I don't think that should be taken lightly ever.
Well, just think of it in the county itself, like 30 less kids in placement is, like $6 million or whatever that we're not paying out, and the county's $3 million to that. And what do they do with it? They're buying salt and fixing potholes. They don't think about prevention. They don't think about refunneling that money into saving more kids. It's very tough. In our meetings, we have the county there, and they're always talking about how broke they are. And and when it comes down to it, it's like, well, we just saved you a boatload of money. You should be able to turn this around into prevention programs like Marcus's basketball program or whatever we need in the county to help kids stay out of trouble. Oh, no. They got bigger fish to fry. They got trucks to buy and salt to buy. So it's very disheartening from that end. at the local level when the budget doesn't reflect, if you save it, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get to keep it or reprogram it into something that would even be better.
Because fixing
But we
the
just-
roads gets the votes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, true. Absolutely true.
I mean,
Yeah.
No, it's true. That's what I
Uh,
was gonna say, is because like now we go back to this piece, we have this discussion almost every time we meet, is like, what do you value? Like, I value human lives. I mean, I want a good road, don't get me wrong. Like I would like to not have a pothole hit my tire, but like I value human lives and would fight and do, right? Like argue pretty strongly for that, but that's not showy and it's not easy to like market and get votes. And I think disheartening. I think disheartening is right.
who else on the call might have something that's going on in the organization around inequitable policies? Is anyone else working on something, hoping to work on something? Because this group is a great kind of brainstorming session. So if you're like, hey, we're seeing this, we don't know where to even begin, throw it out there. Anyone got any burning thoughts? There are definitely connections to be made after the event for sure, right?
Is there anything from a previous conversation that we had today? It feels like we covered a lot.
Mhm.
I feel like equal parts like productive and depressed. So a normal day.
I feel good about the meeting. I feel like I got off, hey, what we're doing great and what I
Yeah.
need and what I need help on.
That's
And I got
amazing.
some help now.
Yeah,
It's true.
100%. Yeah, we will for sure connect after.
We're solving it all.
Set something up.
I feel like so not just depressed. I feel like we've accomplished a lot and we are accomplishing a lot, but I see where we still have a lot more to do. And is that where you're coming from, Sarah? Is I'm excited, but I'm depressed. What's depressing about it? I mean, the only depressing piece to me is that we have so much more to do, and to do what we've done has been a lot of work. So I think that might be the discouraging piece, but I feel like we are so going in the right direction.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, people that know me know I do exaggerate a little bit, and I'm a little
Just a little bit
dramatic. I'm a little bit dramatic for effect, and I like to be funny. But I'm also honest. And the truth is that we got finished talking about. It feels to me like the people who control funding and the people who make big decisions are not leading with human lives as value. That's my truth. That's how I view things. And like city, county, state, federal. Do you feel like the decisions being made are made with like, you know what, I'm going to think about the most vulnerable population? Say, no, they're thinking about money and power. So
who's going to fix the roads?
Exactly. So when I just wrote a note, right? The county doesn't spend money on prevention programs. They're not spending money on a mentoring program so that young people are not in the school to prison pipeline. That's not where they're headed. So to me, yeah, I'm like equal parts disheartened. And then I come on these meetings and I'm like, we don't need them. We'll do this without them. We're going to organize together, right? So if I'm going to be truthful, which I usually am, I hold both.
All we need is Mackenzie Scott to recognize us, and we'll be in a good space. I mean, she gave 133 million to communities and schools, and then last week she gave 50 million to 4-H. This is Jeff Bezos's ex-wife who is worth
Oh, that's her name. Yep.
47 billion dollars. I mean, I kind of figured out that she could probably give away $2 million a day for the rest of her life and still have like $30 million in the bank.
Harry,
So,
don't you have a connection to her? I feel like you know enough people.
I don't.
You're always like, I was in San Diego.
I
and
wish
blah,
I
blah,
wish I
blah.
had a connection. If I had a connection to her, we would be in a lot better place. But
Maybe that could be your next step. I'll help you make an
her
action plan for
philanthropy
that.
is her philanthropy is interesting though. Like most people, you have to write a letter of interest or you have to do some sort of proposal. Her people come in and investigate you. And you have to open all your books to them. And then all of a sudden you wake up one morning and she's dropped $133 million on your doorstep. I mean, that's it. And no strings attached. You don't have to do A, B, and C. You just have to build, you have to do what you're doing better. As you know, she calls them transformational gifts.
Man.
But pretty amazing.
Welcome to my book. I'll open it right up to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Teshna, did you want to add anything? I won't call you out. And if you're like, actually, no, I'm good, then we'll move forward. But you're just, and now, unfortunately, we know each other now and you attend. So I'm just gonna.
And thus begins the call outs. Here we go.
Lean in.
No, my brain was turning when Amy was saying, is there something you got going on? I mean, we just have so much going on, but I'm not directly like involved with. So I just kind of keep my mouth closed unless it's directly related.
Don't keep
to
your
what
mouth
I'm
closed.
doing.
Don't keep your mouth closed. Even if you want to chime in on anyone else's, we all give our 2 cents, whether or not we know anything about it. So
I don't have any problem doing that.
Excellent.
Good. Anyone else? I know who else we have. And I know Rebecca looks, I don't know if you have any.
Quiet.
No, you're welcome to be. We just,
we just want to make sure that we're calling people.
Leaving space for you if you want it. And if you don't, we'll move right along.
I mean, the reason I started coming was to look at how can I help more DEI trainings in the community, because that was something that came out of a grant. So I'm still working on that, and finding what already exists in the community. So I reached out to Nonprofit Network and found out how Cultural Conversations is going, and all of that. So that's really all I'm doing. Is still finding out what exists before I recreate a wheel.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. It seems like there's a lot of initiatives that are going on. Who are you doing that for?
So it's from the MOTA grant. So opioid data action. So it was about providers, right? So behavioral health providers, make sure that they're attending unconscious bias and stigma training. Which I've pulled the data from Henry Ford, who's taking that there. And then I'm going to pull some data from the community ones.
And then are you looking to institute some trainings where there are gaps?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think on the stigma piece around substance use is going to be huge.
Huge. Yeah, 100%. Stigma piece around so many things, but yeah, it's definitely pursued.
And I mean, I used to teach mental health first aid, and I haven't brought this up yet, but it's both mental health and substance use, and it's like so like anti-stigma, and like at the end of that you come up with such an open mind about mental health, but there is a substance use piece to that too. And maybe, I mean, Lifeways was providing those. I don't know if they're still offering those, but maybe that's something I hope offer again.
I used to be a trainer as well. And the thing, and there are of course pluses and minuses to everything, but the time requirement was so hard. We did them in schools, which was great, but like, it's so hard to
Yeah,
we just like need an abridged version. I don't know if that's good or bad, but
yeah. So they just did it for during COVID that it was hybrid. So you did 2 hours on your own and 6 hours in a Zoom room.
oh, okay, that is better than before.
Yeah, it was 8 hours total. So it's working on it, but yeah. And maybe taking pieces of that mental health first aid and making it, evidence informed.
Mhm. Well, that's great. We can move it right along. Last call for the note taker. My fingers are still warm.
We could put in our lunch orders.
Good, right in his notes.
Y'all know me,
Wings.
I gotta eat. I knew we had this from 11 to 1, so I wouldn't got my food beforehand.
Smart. I always forget
Listen,
to do that.
We're out of here at 12:30, Marcus.
Ah,
Well, you just got 30 minutes onto your lunch hour. You got to get food. That's a smart move, though. All right. Well, I'll stop here and I will go back here. Maybe every time I might get smoother. Let's see. So I'll just kind of fly through the rest of the slides. We kind of keep on here just as like a reminder of the framework we use when we have these discussions. And also if we were to, whenever we have our lunch with Marcus, we'll be using this framework as well. Like, why is this happening? Do you have data to show? Have you engaged people to the closest to the problem? And this is the framework we use in all the work we do. We can skip past it. These are just things to also resources and actually this mindset piece, I know that Marcus mentioned earlier too, around how do you know, right? Like if you're moving the needle, or what do we need to know about how to tackle the problem? Like you're probably not going to try and change a policy if it's a mindset issue, or you're probably not going to try and connect people to each other if it's a policy issue. So this is really like a piece around like, what is the actual problem that's happening here? All of these we're happy to send them to you as well. Our 14 root causes that were previously identified will be gathering around another root cause based on what you all enter into your partner profiles, what we hear the community partners are working on.
Also, if you have a profile currently and you feel like it's moving, like you've really kind of looked at navigating that service system, but now there's a second component to the work that you're doing, which might be about, I don't know, mentoring or one of the other root causes, feel free to either go in and adjust that or add that root cause to it, or shoot us an email. If you're like, okay, well, we really kind of gathered around building trust. We feel like we've tackled that. And now we want to take it to that next step about providing evidence-based services or whatever it might be. Make sure that as you're working through your actions and your strategies, even in your own organization, that might not be documented with us. But if the shift changes in the work that you're doing and you feel like you identified another root cause, let us know, because that's the way we are kind of gathering around these, is like hearing from you guys of where there's momentum. So make sure you kind of be like, okay, this is, affordability, making sure services are affordable is our next priority. Give us a heads up.
I do want to update the profile, my partner profile about that we're doing about our hiring process. Do I do that, or do you guys do that?
I don't think you can.
I know our
know.
database doesn't have the capacity to update a partner profile, Marcus. So you would have to go in and like pretend that you've never done one before, and then we can publish it.
To start a new profile,
Yeah.
with your name and your organization, you can copy and paste what you currently had in there and then just add the next one, and then we'll delete the old one.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yep. And we can
Or email us and we'll make it happen too in the back. We got secret access.
It'd be VIP access to the website that everyone craves. Just a reminder of the next time we meet. I think it's the 4th Thursday of every month, but usually when I say thirds or fourths, I'm always wrong. So here's a reminder for you. I know. And then the other affinity groups that I mentioned earlier meet like second Tuesday, third Wednesday. So it tends to be the same of every month. And then there's a link we will also send you for all the upcoming events. And then also we're like open to like you are all the ones doing the work. So if you have thoughts around like, you know, we've been hearing a lot of people talk about that they're actually working on one of our root causes is around like bias, and people are starting to talk a lot about that, right? Like, I mean, everything is overlapped, but the community members acknowledge bias and treat everyone in a respectful, equitable manner. Like that could overlap into a million things. But if you all are like, listen, we should be meeting around this, like, let us know. Our goal is to like support and create spaces for that are benefit, you know?
Question. Do you two run all of the affinity groups?
Yes, this feels like
Unless
a
you
loaded
want to.
question. Yes.
No. I mean, 'cause I'm in this affinity group, and believe me, I don't have time to be in all of them.
Yeah.
But I will know if you two are running them. I know y'all well enough now that I can pop in one if I need to.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always us. One
All
or
right,
the other
perfect.
or both.
That's
Yeah.
all. That's
Yes.
my reason for asking.
Yes.
I don't want to pop in a group I didn't belong to, and there was some other facilitators. But if it's you two,
It's us.
I'm like, all right, I need to pop in this group.
Yeah, you can pop in and
You're
leave and
great.
come and go. And yeah, any input is great. We love to have, and we're not, you know us, we're not formal.
Very
So,
professional.
Me either. That's why I like y'all.
This is why we get along. No, but we're real. We tell the truth. And then our closing slide. Hopefully by now you all know that we are personable and would love to do. If you would like to meet afterwards, Marcus will be in touch with you for sure. We'll arrange a lunch. And anyone else, if you'd like to meet, chat, talk about work, have a cup of coffee, meet in person, take a step into the
Brainstorm
real
about
world.
stuff.
Who knows? We would love it. So yeah, thank you all for your time today. What a lovely
thanks.
conversation. We'll send some notes out and send all the next steps. Angie, I think you're saying goodbye, but you're on mute, so I'll just believe you.
Bye, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks
you
all.
guys.
Thanks.
See you later.
See you tomorrow, Rebecca.